and no other. And I think a great weekend with Juneteenth here tomorrow. So my name is Katrice Dixon. I like to say that I'm a product, a producer, and a parent of Broward County Public Schools. I currently teach math at Crystal Lake Middle School, and I go by the name of Math Chains. That was something the kids kind of cultivated, and I've ran with it, and it's worked for us. So I've saw some of the questions. People are like, do it for the culture. What's the it? How do we do it? And those things. So I didn't really answer because I felt like the presentation would be the answers to those all. So I am going to start with I don't have like a real long PowerPoint, but there was a video that I felt was essential to every educator to see. A lot of educators have already seen this video, but every time I see it, I take away something different from it. So I hope that you guys enjoy it as well. All right, give me just a second to get that shared. All right, so here it is. Do it for the culture. All right, so the video here, if anybody's familiar with Miss Rita Pearson, I found out about her once she was actually gone, but I kind of always had that inclination of I wanted to be an educator. I wanted to impact lives. I really wanted to be a philanthropist when I was younger, and still a goal, just got to get the money to match up with that vision. But when I saw this video from her, it made me rethink the way I impacted with my students, with staff, just overall in the community as a community leader. It just changed something for me. And I wanted to start my presentation with this video so that it could do something for you guys as well. So if you've seen it before, you're probably already aware of the keys to being a champion, but I just want to share this with everyone. Take a moment. Is it still sharing?
Capital B, capital R, and small v. Yeah.
Please mute all devices.
Okay, what did I do? There we go. Has a little ad before it, sorry.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good. Some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection, relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without relationships. George Washington Carver says all learning understands relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock.
That's true.
Lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class. Because I am the best teacher and you are the best students, they put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so, I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in that video for me. Wow. All right. So what Rita did was showed us a base culture, right? As far as like identifying relationships, seeing what we can do to go in. And I have to be honest with you, this was my freshman year as an equity liaison. So last year I took a lot of the trainings, courageous conversations, culturally responsible. I didn't realize that culture and my skin color weren't even the same. And I can be transparent and say that at 30 years old, I didn't realize how significantly different those things were. I've tended to work in inner city schools. And when I went from one inner city school to another one, I noticed that yes, these kids were a majority African American, but they were so different. And for me, it just didn't quite make sense. I wanted to figure out, but I realized that culture can be different. When we think about the culture, culture encompasses social institutes, achievement, characteristics, knowledge in a particular area. So when we talk about doing it for the culture, oh, I'm sorry, was someone speaking to me? When we talk about doing it for the culture, we've got to take into account the culture of where we are. And I know everybody here is not necessarily an educator, but in that office building, in that community that you're on, in your local church, what does the culture look like? Identifying that culture and working towards it. I wanted to share a couple things from when I looked at that video. Like I went to a new school this year, Crystal Lake Middle School. And we all know this was pandemic teaching. We had these masks on. We were learning how to be an in-person and a virtual teacher. It just was overwhelming. There was a particular student that I met. The first day that I met him, he walked up to me and I said, we're going to sit outside because my room is really cold and I want you guys to get some fresh air and just be able to like kind of move about a little bit. The kid looked me in my eyes and said, well, miss, I don't walk anywhere. If you want me to go, you have to carry me. And I always say, I'm just one of those really transparent. I just started laughing because it was so funny. It just really overtook me. I didn't know what to say. And so I told him, I said, you know what, I guess you're going to be sitting here in this hallway. And now this was a kid, I got the, he had an IEP, but he also had behavior issues with all the other teachers, constantly getting in trouble. So I had kind of been pre-warned. But I was also that kid growing up. So it was almost like I was meeting my own kind, right? I understood his culture already because what he was displaying was what I used to display in Broward County schools myself. And so long story short, by the end of third and fourth quarter, this kid has all A's in all of his core courses, but he used to sit next to me every day. He would talk to me. If I was absent, he called himself Miss Dixon 2.0. But the only way we were able to get to that from our starting point is because I learned and understood his culture. And I taught according to the culture that he had. I can't speak for his home life, whether there was structure or not. And we all know as educators and just being around children, everybody's raised different. Things are different from one home to the other. So we have to like really deep dive in with the children, with the staff, even with our peers. Sometimes we don't, if you've ever sat in the teacher's lounge, you can hear 10,000 different opinions because they're all coming from different perspectives or viewpoints of life. So when we talk about teaching to the culture, we've got to identify what that culture is and place emphasis on it. So I am going to give you guys today the 7 principles of culturally responsive teaching. Because when we talk about doing it for that culture, we got to make sure we implement some ground rules, and then you kind of figure it out based on where you are. Now, I'm going to jump here a little bit. These are the orders in which I learned them. But number 6 has always stood out to me as an educator. It says the classroom is managed with firm, consistent, loving control. The loving part has always stuck out to me because many times, many jobs require that you leave the love at the door. You don't take that in with you. You kind of leave your heart, you go in, you get things done, and you do what's needed, right? But I think that's one of the biggest things about being an educator. Nothing in this world exists without us. Everybody has to go through some type of schooling to become something. Even when we talk about a newborn baby, you got to teach them how to hold a bottle, how to crawl, how to walk. So this is a foundational skill that I believe that everybody has, but we've just got to figure out how to make it work. And so I don't leave my love at the door. I tell my students often, and probably more times than they probably want to hear, that I love you. Because when they realize that I'm leading with love, it makes it that much easier for me to actually get information from them about their culture and integrate myself in their culture and integrate them into mine. So, and I say that because there's a student, I think second year teaching, he's walking out the door and I always say, I love y'all. I love y'all. Y'all have a great weekend. He stopped and he stared at me. He said, why you told me you love me? And I said, because I do. What do you mean? He said, you know, you're the first person who ever told me out loud you love me. And I'm a mom. I say it quite often, but I also see that there are family dynamics where love is just shown. It's not actually said. So I encourage you, if you aren't already, make sure that the kids can identify that you love them. Because if you love them first, you can reach them in every capacity. I'm a math teacher, but sometimes I help with science. Sometimes I help with reading. Sometimes I help with art, and I can't draw a lick, guys. But because I lead with love, they feel more comfortable to come and ask me for help with anything, even if it's a subject matter I don't know. And I'm like, listen, not my expertise. We're going to have to YouTube this thing. But because I've led with love, it's created that open atmosphere for me to be able to really teach the children. All right, so again, not gonna like long wind these. And if you guys want these, I do have a PDF format that I could actually send you all of these. So the first principle is students are affirmed in their cultural connections. I like to start my year out with finding out who they are, where they're from. You know, a lot of kids, I know when I was younger, they would say, tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? And I would hear all the kids in my class like, oh, I'm from Haiti. I'm from Jamaica. Guys, I wanted to be from somewhere so bad. And I see that replicating with my 6-year-old son because his school did an amazing Haitian Flag Day celebration. And now he's like, Mommy, can I be Haitian? But I remember being that kid wanting to belong. So we have to make sure that we're affirming them in who they are. You know, I was just from Georgia. I was born in Georgia, but I had educators who were like, that is so cool. And where did you live? And what did you do? And, you know, once I saw that they cared and they wanted to engage and know me, I wanted to work harder for those teachers. I wanted to make sure, I didn't know anything about evaluations back in the day, right? But something in me said, if these teachers don't do good with me, they probably won't have a job. You know, you just kind of have that responsibility. So I wanted to make sure that those teachers shine bright. So I strive for straight A's. Number 2, teachers are personally inviting. I know there are some teachers who are like, you know, I don't want these kids in my business. And that's understandable. Every teacher is not going to be the Instagram teacher and connecting with them on social media or going out to the football fields. But, you know, sometimes just letting them know, hey, I used to play football. Hey, I cheered. And letting them know that you're there. Having an open door policy, even with the locked doors, knowing that those kids can, hey, if I need something, I can knock on this door, even if it's just needing to talk. Especially in the pandemic, I think it really highlighted how much our kids need a somebody. I saw students who would walk in my classroom and not speak. And we didn't know until winter camp, like they had a parent who passed away and different things like that. So, you know, letting them know that we're here for them, it's going to help us to be able to reach them. All right. So learning environments are physically and culturally inviting. I just told my summer administrator, I've got to decorate my room. It looks like a little jail cell. It's all, brick wall. There's nothing hanging up. No kid wants, I don't want that. Most of us go to Home Goods, TJ Maxx, Ross, Z Gallery, you name it, and we decorate our homes because when we open that door and we walk in, we want to feel something. We want to feel like we belong. That's our place of refuge. Creating an environment in our classroom at that same capacity. Now, I'm not saying break the bank at Z Gallery for a classroom, but even if it's just a personalized picture on the wall, something other than just those same printouts, letting them know like, this environment is for you. I like to tell my students the classroom belongs to them. So I get things that encouraging words and posters to put on the wall because maybe at home they're not getting it and maybe they are, but I want to make sure that they have that extra emphasis that this place is for them. It's representative of their culture. And that doesn't just have to be where you're from. Sometimes you can walk in my classroom and we'll play some Beyonce music. I'm not really huge into rap music, but the kids will tell me a song, I'll vet it, listen to it, find it without the explicitives, and we'll play it because I want them to know that this is their place. And when they know that it's their place, we have a greater opportunity of reaching them. All right. Students are reinforced for academic development. That's number 4. Now, this has changed for me tremendously because this like around Mother's Day, May, I had the opportunity of training at Ron Clark in Atlanta. If anybody's familiar with him, he's been on Oprah, one of the best schools in Atlanta, but they're high on engagement, but super high on rigor. Like the 3rd grade class was doing 8th grade standards, okay? So I think when you have, well, no, I don't think, I know, and I believe that when you have created an environment as such that the kids feel like I'm safe here, I can make a mistake, you're gonna forgive me, you're gonna help me, we can increase that rigor. We don't have to teach to the bottom. We don't even have to teach to the middle. We can teach to the highest kid in the class and everybody else is gonna rise to the occasion. Because let's just think about your family dynamic at home, right? If you saw that your mother was a doctor, 9 times out of 10, you're not gonna strive to wanna work at McDonald's. You're going to strive to be a doctor too, or something at that level. You're going to want to strive to live in those same neighborhoods, drive those same cars, or better. That's just our natural human instinct. So if we can push our students by creating that cultural environment that, hey, this is an accepting place, this is a loving place, then we can help them to look at their academic achievement at a higher level. I tell my students all the time, I'm taking a new course. Oh, I'm going back to school to get another degree. Like this morning, the facilitator called me Dr. Dixon. I claimed that thing and now I've got to share that with my students in summer school that I'm going to become Dr. Dixon because if they see me working towards my goals fearlessly, they're going to follow suit because we've already created an environment of trust and love. All right. So instructional changes are made to accommodate differences in learners. Now, I always say this, IEPs are great. They're a great tool, but what about the kid who doesn't have the IEP, but I've just noticed something about you? I'm doing the gifted certification right now. And sometimes I look at my sons and I'm like, ooh, he might be gifted. I'm like evaluating everybody around me. But when we don't look at those populations to see the individual characteristics of that child, we just teach to the IEP or, any type of learning plan. What about the kid who doesn't have that? Who's looking out for them? Who's watching to see, well, what are their keys and their quirks? How can I help them and kind of do things for them? The district is big on PBL right now. I encourage anybody to go through that training because like I did that with the lower 30 percentile of my students and they were learning. I never taught a standard the entire PBL, never. I told them this is the project. They were supposed to go on vacation, plan a family trip. It's decimal operations. But these kids went and researched everything that they needed to do to figure out how to add that money up, how to calculate those taxes. I did not have to teach a standard. And we tied it to actual families, my family. But they felt like they were giving me something. They was like, Miss Dixon, I know you don't make a lot of money as a teacher, but I found this really great trip and you can go here and you can go here. And we had to add historical landmarks that my kids could go to, but they did so amazing and it went beyond the class. It went beyond the classroom walls of math. We were looking at social studies. We were looking at ELA. We were able to cross standards and they were just doing something that they thought was giving back to me. a single mom trying to help me go on a vacation on a budget, but it was teaching them the standards that were necessary for the next year. All right, so again, back to 6. Again, my favorite classroom is managed with firm, consistent, and loving control. So again, when we talk about that, firmness, this is one of the ones I think that depending on how we grew up, what we've done, firmness can be viewed different ways. Firm doesn't mean I've got to yell. I always tell my parents when I do tutoring, parents sometimes become that. If you guys have ever seen the Instagram or Facebook thing where it's like, if Johnny had 5 apples, that doesn't necessarily mean firmness. And sometimes that's a shutdown for some of our kids. Because again, we didn't raise them. We don't know what they've been through. We don't know their experiences at home. We don't know their types of communication. We've got to be firm and fair, but firm doesn't equate to mean. And that's something even I had to learn. I'm not a parent that like has a lot of rules in my home, and I don't post rules in my classroom. And, you know, some teachers are like, that's a little sketchy, but I just think about it. When you're at your house, you learn the culture of your home. So if I'm creating and facilitating culture, I don't necessarily need rules on the walls. It's almost like when I'm raising my babies and I tell them, don't touch that. Nope, don't do that. We figure that thing out as we go. Now, of course, they know that there are the classroom expectations or the things that we know we've got to do. We got to come here with a pencil. But guess what? If you don't have one, I do a campaign every single year. Last year, I bought in 5,000 pencils. This year, it's going to be 10,000. I've got you. But I don't have to put on the rules like don't eat or chew gum, because we create those assumptions like, hey guys, this is our room. We want to keep it nice. We don't want any bugs. We don't want any things. I talk to them as though I'm talking to my children or someone who I'm inviting into my home. And when people walk through my front door, the only thing I have posted for them is the Wi-Fi password, because everybody asks for that as soon as they come into your house. But I don't have a list of rules about take your shoes off. If that is a rule in my home, I just say, hey, can you please take your shoes off? And I provide socks. But I don't post it on the wall. I don't tell them, hey, only use my downstairs bathroom. I say, hey, this is the guest bathroom. And so I create that kind of environment with my students. And then number 7, last but not least here, interactions stress collectivity as well as individuality. Everybody hates the group project. Everybody does. Because there's always that one person who is like the worker. And then we've got the one person who's like I like to call them the IG TikTokers. They're doing nothing to contribute to the group of it. But when we create those type of cultures and we understand where our kids' background, hey, well, maybe this project's going to have TikTok in it. So my TikToker who doesn't like to write, maybe we can use them in that portion of it. So again, like I said, I didn't want to give too much emphasis on the 1 through 7, because I think as educators, as human beings, these are things that we're already doing, but making sure we put that emphasis on putting them in our classroom. And every time that we engage or interact with children or our peers or whoever. So I know I've been talking, I forgot to stop for questions. So does anybody have any questions, comments, things you want to chime in? Because I wanted this to be a safe space for us where we can share as educators and continue to help each other to do it for the culture, to really key in on how do we establish these things to make for a better environment, not just for these kids, but for us too, because we got to be the same amount of time as they do, probably longer with planning, right? So would anybody like to contribute, share, ask a question?
I guess I'm curious your game plan once they come back, since they have been virtual, or some kids have been virtual since March of the previous year, which means they have not really been doing any work or motivated to do work. Maybe your first 3 game plans or something you could share about that?
Oh, sure. So one thing, and it's hard to do this on Zoom, but I did it in my classroom. One thing I think this social emotional push is definitely encouraging. Because like I said, I've seen kids who have lost grandma, granddad, they've lost every leg that they have, and even for me, I've lost people in this pandemic, and it's hard to shake that thing and get back into work and, just be all smiles. So one of my key things as I do is an engagement tool with my students to start to first establish the relationship. So I do this, hey, everybody, how you doing today? So the response is, I'm good. Everybody says I'm good, because even if you're not good, if you speak that thing, you'll start to feel like you are. But it also allows us to see a checkpoint, because to not use the student's name, I had a little girl one day, we're going around the circle, because you say, hey, everybody, how you doing today? And we clap, we dance a little bit, and we say, I'm good, I'm good. One little girl says, I'm good. So once we passed her and, we went around our circle, because we've now created a relationship, I didn't even have to go to her to see what was wrong with her. The kids did. But in the beginning, I would be that person that say, hey, you know what? These 5 people didn't sound so good. And so while they're working out, like, hey, how you doing today? What's going on? Everything good at the house? But because we did that for so long, the kids were checking in, and I was almost like, yes, like in the back screaming, because they would go in and say, hey, I'm gonna just say, Johnny, I noticed when you said, I'm good, you ain't sound so good. Something going on? And some of them was hungry, y'all. And the other kids would have their snacks, or they would tell me, Miss Dixon, you got some stuff, and it was minor things like that, but it created that culture. And then I'm hoping that it's a little less pandemic-y. I like to do a handshake or a clap or some type of chant with my students, because that's what families do. Like when you leave your families, Thanksgiving, whatever it is, whether it's walking out the door saying, I love you, or everybody come in and give a hug, we all have some type of symbolism that lets us know, like, these my people. So in the beginning of the school year, I do something like that. I allow the kids to get in groups, create a handshake, create a chant, whatever it is they want to do for their particular block, because I'm in middle school, and we do that. And we continue to do that through the year. And when we get new kids in, we do that too. And then the third thing, if I had to put a third, I create ambassadors in my classroom. And those ambassadors, those are the people who acclimate new students, because, when we get new drop-ins all the time, they kind of teach them the culture, like, hey, this is how the classroom works. Ain't no rules on the wall. They go ahead and let them know. Ain't no rules on the wall. Sometimes the teacher might say, don't do that. Don't do that. I don't like that. That's a pet peeve for mine. And they kind of let them know. And we do that with each other, because I will mess up a name so good, y'all. I'm terrible. And I tell my kids that up front. I said, let me tell you something. And, a lot of kids won't correct adults because of the experiences that they've had. And I let them know I'm not that adult. If your name is Shayna and I call you Sheila, stop me. Miss Dixon, what they call me, Mad Chains. Mad Chains, that ain't my name. And I don't find it to be disrespectful, because your name is what you have. As a kid, you don't own a home. Most of them don't. They don't own a car. That's what they own. And so I try to make sure my first week, when everybody's reading the rules and kind of going over classroom, that's a part I go over my culture. And I let them know, hey, this is what it is for us. And I create that for them. And, I just have to say, for me, it's been successful, because it's just like when I'm rearing up my kids at home, I'm just creating and establishing what we do in the beginning, and it just goes on. And we had the ones that, fight against, they buck against the rules, right? And I let them know, listen, you want me to have to call home? Like, I don't want to have to call home. You're a big kid. Even I tell my kindergartner that when he does things, I'm like, listen, you're a big kid. I don't want to have to talk to you about little kid issues. And for something, it clicks for him. So, it's just, it has worked. I won't say I've never written a referral. I think I've maybe written 4 in my whole entire, but when I train them that they're bigger than what they think they are, because they already want to act grown, if we're really honest, right? They all want to be a little bit older than what they are. They're a little more mature. Okay, so I'm going to give you that responsibility back and show me what you're going to do with it. So that's basically my first few things. It's always relationship over rigor. It's always relationship over standards for me, because it always comes with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd like to just jump in. Thank you so much, Queen, for these nuggets. It's very, it has been very informational. I believe that for ourselves, we definitely need to analyze our own self in terms of our own biases, because we tend to label our students before they even sit in our classrooms. So it's definitely important for us to know some of these things. And your message is pretty much spot on. I attended a conference on culturally responsive teaching about 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And that part where you say compassion for your students or empathy, having empathy, do we realize who they are, is so important, because that pretty much will determine how well our child does work for us in the classroom. So it's important for us to not only share, not only just get this information that we received today, but share it at our schools. I think like us who are here really, really know what we want to do. Like we set to be the change. Let's start having those conversations in our schools so that we can reach the masses, because it's so important for us to get this narrative out there, right? How we respond to our students, and it has been very beneficial. So we definitely set the tone. So come August, we need to be sitting in those professional development, leading with the information that we have today.
That is true. I cannot agree with you more, because, we electively sign up to this. This isn't those mandated courses, So a lot of times the people who want to be about the change are here because they signed up for it, and it's not forced. But yeah, bringing it back to your school through those PDs, because everybody got to go to PDs. Everybody got to go to the, the faculty meetings. And if we can kind of share those nuggets with our colleagues and things, I think it makes for a better district, and it makes for a better generation to come.
Hello, Queen. This is Amisa. You have a question in the chat from Kimberly. How do we authentically reconnect with students returning from the trauma of the pandemic? And you may have already touched on this, but I just wanted to make sure you saw that question.
Sure. And thank you so much. You know what, guys, for me, it's just being who you are. Just being real. When I was losing people during the pandemic, there was times I sat at my desk and cried with those kids. And I would even do activities like with a TED Talk. One of my great friends, she was an educator. She was killed in a car accident, and her cousin did a TED Talk dedicated, and I shared it with my kids. And I cried a little, and I told them, I said, y'all lost somebody before? And they were like, yeah, giving them that moment to talk, to express. I always tell people, and this might be bad, but it's real. We was getting stimulus checks and all these type of things. The kids were getting nothing but computers and saying, go to online school. What was their little, I'm coming out of this, or something's helping me. So I just like to I'm transparent with my kids. When you bring your authentic self to that classroom, you don't have to make up a plan. You don't have to think of how I'm going to connect, because being who you are allows you to do that.
I have a question. I'm sorry to bother.
No worries. Go ahead.
So and I know this is horrible, but I don't struggle with the kids because, like you said, I feel like kids real recognize real, and the kids will understand when you're trying to put on airs for them and when you're actually like about that life.
Right.
Where I struggle is like at the PDs with the coworkers. I struggle at the staff meetings hearing how lazy the kids are, how they don't care. Like where my tool set is limited is not necessarily with the babies, because they're babies. Like even the 11th graders are I teach 11th grade. They're still excited to do a Kahoot in 11th grade. They're still, they want to have fun. They want to be genuine. The adults are where I struggle.
Okay. And listen, I think we all can probably agree to that. Personalities, adults, everybody, sometimes we get in circles, everybody wants to be a boss. But you know what I do in those type of instances, and it works for me. I don't know if it's, I might have to write my dissertation on this, but find the one. If I can find one, because if we all think about being able to impact or impart or to make a change with one, you find your one, then that one finds their one. It might not be this school year where the whole school culture is changed, right? But if I can just focus on kind of impacting just one, because it's hard when you've got 30 different voices saying, oh, Johnny is so terrible. Johnny does this. Johnny does this. Well, what about that teacher says, Johnny is bad, but after he come to your class, he's sometimes good. Then I go in on that teacher. I'm like, well, you know what I do with Johnny? I talk to Johnny like this, and Johnny has a cat at home. Ask Johnny about the little cat Felix, because if I can just reach one, I'm fine. And because then that one will transform, and they may be able to even reach more than you have, because simply they were initially a part of that negative Nancy group.
Also, I have a Spotify box in my class because you had said about music.
Oh yeah.
I let them give me suggestions, and then during warm-ups I'll play it on Spotify, but like it gives me time to like check it, because not all songs are created
right
equal. I'm not trying to put on your cousin's SoundCloud album,
Yeah.
but yeah, I have like a Spotify box, like a suggestion box, and the kids really get hyped when you pick their song.
Oh yeah. They think that's so cool. And that's you didn't even spend money, as far as like listening to a song. You can pull them up on YouTube. So I think that is so cool. I think I'm gonna do a box this year. I gotta write that note down.
Because you'd be surprised, all the kids give you the same song, and then you're like, yeah, absolutely, I picked yours, Kenitra. It's absolutely your song.
Right. Definitely. Okay. Well, anybody else in the room? I know we have like 5 minutes. Okay. Well, I guess, again, I'm Miss Dixon. Guys, I know some of your equity liaisons, things like that. I love to partner with like-minded people, even non-like-minded people, right? So that I can continue to grow and become a better educator. So you guys can always send me an email. My email's weird because it says Katrice.Burton. But again, I do go by Math Chains. I'm really trying to become an educational rapper, like seriously, like be featured on vocabulary. So I have like a website, which is mathchains.com and things. But I would love to continue this conversation with people. And just like she shared the Spotify box, let's make those things. Go ahead.
Oh, I can go off of that.
So we can share, continue to share, because I just think if everybody, kind of puts a little in, we'll see the change that we're looking for. We'll be the change that we want to see. Oh, thank you. I'm trying to read everybody's things. Oh, I do math reps, my scholar too. Yes, and maybe we can collab. Like, guys, I mean, the more energy that teachers can give to these kids, I know they're gonna buy in. Like, they need us. Like, everybody, there's no doctors without us. There's no lawyers without us. There's no basketball players without us. Like, and so we've got to take back our power. We got to really show them that, this is where it's at. Like, so I think, I'm so grateful for you guys. I'm trying to go through and like read all the chats. I'm going to read them all day anyway, but thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being the change. Like, seriously, I really appreciate you all. And Amisa, I think that's Amisa, right? Amisa, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Yes.
Listen, thank you so much for hitting the record button.
You're welcome. I'll go on and stop recording now.